Together we learn, together we grow, together we heal, together we flow. Be cool, every teacher, every school. 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 Be cool.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Todd Scholl. I serve as the lead learner for the SCEA Center for Educator Wellness and Learning, and welcome to the second season of CEWL Beans. And with me, as always, are the co-hosts of CEWL Beans, Angelica McDonald and Dr. Marcella Wine-Snyder. How are y'all doing tonight?
Doing great tonight. How are you all?
Awesome.
I'm good. Tonight, we're going to be talking about cell phone, kicking off our second season. And as many folks across the state of South Carolina are aware, there is a new cell phone policy that's being implemented in January. And a lot of districts right now are trying to figure out exactly what their cell phone policy is going to be. But it's a pretty strict policy. And so we decided we would talk about that tonight with a particular emphasis on what this might look like for early career educators, and of course for our students, and really every educator across South Carolina is going to be a huge shift. So let's first of all start off like introducing yourselves. I introduce myself, Angelica. For folks who maybe this is their first time watching CEWL Beans, we'll let you introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. My name is Angelica McDonald. I am a fifth-year educator, so I'm in the PD region. So even though it's in my fifth year, but this year, I won Teacher of the Year at my school last year. So that was very exciting and surprising for just being, even though I'm not technically an induction teacher, but just being my first 5 years. So that was completely shocking and, completely blew my mind. So I'm in my fifth year, but made Teacher of the Year at my school and became an honor roll teacher at my district. So, getting the ball rolling for, those first few years. So, and I also thank you guys because with all your support and, learning through the podcast. So I hope hopefully everyone also, you can learn a lot from this podcast as a new teacher.
Yeah, what a testament to your level of excellence, Angelica. And we are so proud of you. Congratulations again.
Congratulations.
Hey everyone, I'm Marcella Wine-Snyder. I'm the Teaching and Learning Specialist at CEWL, so I get the unique opportunity to work with our state's induction teachers by providing support and professional development, and I am definitely enjoying the journey.
Yeah. So as we think about this policy, let's first of all explain to folks what it's going to be, which is basically a total ban on cell phones. For students, they're not going to be allowed to have them out, those devices with them at all during the school day. Now, I am assuming they could have them in a backpack as long as they're out of sight. But in terms of the school day, there's not going to be any allowances for them to have them out, even like during breaks or lunch or anything like that, from my understanding of the policy. And what I think school districts right now are trying to figure out is, okay, so what are the sort of consequences going to be if they do have the cell phone out? Let's just talk about it. For what are your initial impressions of this new policy?
So kind of going in, so I know my very first year, so even though I started in the middle of COVID, but cell phones were a really huge issue, mainly because kids didn't know how to communicate with each other. So cell phones, so even if I, was kind of firm with it, of course, we're always sneaking them out. And I know with a lot of students, they use cell phones. Of course, parents hopefully want their students to use their phones to, contact them. But I was noticing students were using it to bully each other, to find each other, to go to the bathroom, then fights would break out. So kind of seeing this is kind of a good thing, I believe, having that cell phone ban is kind of limiting students with, using it in the classroom. I understand using it during breaks. And of course, parents want to have that communication with their kids, which I understand, but they shouldn't have to do that during class time. And if it's an emergency, of course, the office, I believe, can, of course, make sure the students know there's an emergency and they can contact their parents that way. So I think, especially with cell phones and being an English teacher, I'm noticing how students have a very low attention span with TikTok, social media. Even with me being on TikTok for a while, I'm noticing I don't have a long attention span. I'll look at something, scroll. I'm like, wait, I can't scroll on this. So I think that will also help kids with their reading comprehension and just staying focused, because a lot of students are losing that focus a lot.
Okay. All right, you're right, both Todd and Angelica. And I think that the policy mandates that districts primarily adopt rules that will ban cell phone use during the school day. And I know in other states, sometimes it's not banned during the school day, but it's banned like during class time. So they are able to use it like during recess or other times where they're not in class. But I know in South Carolina, it's a total ban. And the impetus for doing so is to basically help students avoid distractions, like Angelica mentioned, cyberbullying, and then also cheating. So academic dishonesty is another caveat to that. I think we both know that there are pros and cons to technology in classrooms. And I think that what we're going to run into with our cell phone ban is it's going to be difficult to implement. And I don't think it's going to be difficult to implement at the school level. I think the primary problem will be, or the complaint will be, mostly by parents.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's our group that we're going to have to focus on, that will have a harder time adjusting to the cell phone ban policy.
Yeah.
Because as parents, we've gotten so used to being able to contact our children
Right.
all the time, at any time of day.
That's right. I have mixed feelings about it, because I do think on one hand, we know studies are showing the more kids are on their phones, particularly on social media, which is what they're probably doing when they're on their phones. There's a correlation between the use of social media and then rates of mental health issues, anxiety, depression, and things like that. So I think kids are probably getting way too much screen time now in school and then at home. And so I like the idea of cutting down the amount of screen time these kids have. What I generally bristle at is making a blanket policy from on high, saying everybody's got to have this particular policy, which means every district, every school, every classroom, every teacher. When there may be situations where actually utilization of the cell phone would be a smart thing. For example, I taught broadcast journalism. A really great way for my kids to learn how to use their phones as a camera, as a video camera, how to edit video, and utilize social media responsibly within the context of that classroom might be a really good example of an exception. So I wish that. I just always bristle at any policy that says one size fits all. We're all going to do the same thing. But I also understand the need for, if we're going to do this for folks to be on board and there to be some consistency from classroom to classroom.
Because I know, looking through the article about the law, so really they're, like you said, they're making a blanket statement, but they're saying it's up to the districts. So I'm just very curious on how are the districts are going to implement that? Because I know some districts kind of do that, or it might be by school. But what I'm really afraid about, or kind of eerie about, is if a kid does have it out, what are going to be those, consequences?
Right.
And, some schools and some districts are going to be stricter than others. And then I'm also wondering, so mainly what are going to be those consequences? Like, how is that going to affect teaching? Also, what's going to be the pullback? So even like you said earlier, if the parents are kind of against that, and of course, if the parents are going against it and they're saying that aloud, their students are going to be against that. So is there going to be some sort of pullback against that? And what's that going to look like if, what are the consequences? Or what happens if a teacher, allows the cell phones in the class? Will they get in trouble? So I'm just wondering, what are the pros, maybe not the pros and cons, but what are all the caveats to this? Because it's just really a blank law and there's no really detailed to it. And some of the representatives said they didn't have enough time to even really look through it and just agree to it. So I'm just very curious of what that's going to look like.
Yeah, and I think that districts are grappling with that now. They're trying to figure out what their policies are going to be and basically how they're going to implement those policies. Notably, there are some exceptions, of course, to the cell phone ban policy, and they made mention of it being for IEPs, 504s, and medical plans. And so those students who have those situations will be able to utilize their cell phones for those specific educational purposes. Um, I agree as well about it being sort of difficult to implement because, like you said, Angelica, I get notifications when I'm on my phone consistently. Like, it's time to take a break. You have too much screen time. And so I completely understand what we're grappling with and what we're dealing with. But I do think that some controlled use of cell phones and limitations to cell phones will definitely help us in the classroom, help teachers in the classroom. So we know what some of the pros are for sure. We have to take a look at what the cons are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Horry County released a draft of their policy basically saying that if a student violates the policy in any grade level, that the device is taken and the parent or guardian must go to pick up the device from the front office. So I think this is going to be, like you said, a transitional time where there's going to be a lot of these situations where parents are going to have to go in,
Mm-hmm.
and there's going to be a flood of that, especially in a school, for example, like Carolina Forest, where there's 3,000 students, trying to keep up with all those parents coming in to get those devices. If you had like even just 1% of the population, you've got 30 parents coming in on a daily basis, getting those devices. I guess my concern is, we know that virtually every human being in America, short of a few people maybe who live in the wilderness, are using these devices. And I think there needs to be, coupled with this at a minimum, some type of media literacy course where students are allowed to use their phone and learn from a responsible adult how to use those phones responsibly, talking about things like screen time, talking about bullying, talking about the different types of social media and what you can do with the phone. It's a very powerful tool that we all have in our pockets. How do we use it responsibly, and how do we make sure it's not using us? And I think that's needs to be, hopefully that will be a part of district policy, is to start implementing some type of course that allows students to learn how to use those devices responsibly.
Because I was just about to say something about that too, because even though you tell kids no or don't have it, but they need to learn how to use their phones. And even adults need to learn how to use their phones too, if I can add that as well. But the only thing I'm just wondering, like, how are they going to do a media literacy class? Like, is that going to fall on the English teachers? Is that going to be like a, elective class? And of course, if it's elective, they're not really going to take it if they don't need it.
Right.
So I just really want a way so kids can actually learn how to use their phone. So how do you communicate with each other? Because I have that conversation so many times with a lot of my students. They'll come to me about their boyfriend, girlfriend troubles, and they're showing me their text. I'm like, did you actually talk to that person in person? Because what you wrote in the text is completely different than the way you're speaking to me. And so sometimes, even though it has nothing to do with class, I have to take a moment and teach them, like, this is how you use your cell phone. This is how you're actually communicating. And even via email and, technology, period, and how they're communicating. So it's just very interesting in how we're going to see that shift. Because if they're not allowed to use it, which is fine, but what about after school? Because maybe all the things that were pent up during class is going to happen outside of class. So is that going to get worse? So there's just a lot of things that can happen that we have to figure out as, the years come along.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that perspective that you shared, Todd, because usually when I teach or when I talk to induction teachers, early career educators, and we talk about classroom management, I often say that there should be an instructional approach to behavior. So if something isn't happening, we're supposed to teach them how to do it. But like you mentioned, I don't think we've gotten to that point where we have even considered having a literacy class where we teach them, basically how to use that computer in their pocket. So,
Right.
but we're going straight to a cell phone ban. And that's disconcerting because, like you said, there are opportunities for them to use it for instructional purposes. But I understand, on the other hand, um, they're just so distracted by it. Will they actually focus on it? But
Yeah.
everything has to be taught.
Yeah. To me, it's about finding balance. I would like, my vision for education includes a lot more outdoors time, a lot more social interaction, just a lot more sort of exploring things outside of the school, and really getting away from the screen for a while, like intentionally getting away from the screen. But I think it's all about being intentional, right? If we're just really loose and lax with our cell phone policies, and kids are in class just texting or on social media, not really paying attention,
Mhm.
obviously that's a problem. I don't think any parent wants their child to be like on TikTok when they're supposed to be learning math. I really don't think most parents support that. But how do we teach this generation how to use that device with intention, so that the device isn't using them? Because that's what all of social media and really a lot of what's on the phone is a part of this sort of attention economy, which is like the more time you spend on the app, the more these people are making money. So all the algorithms are geared towards keeping you addicted and keeping you coming back. If students don't understand that, they become addicted to those apps, and they don't even know it. They're not even aware of it. So to me, it's so much about the intention, about saying now's a time where we're going to put these things away, and we're going to actually just talk with each other, or we're going to go outside, or we're going to do some other activity that doesn't have anything to do with technology. Which kind of brings us to a point of like technology in general. Like, what are we doing in terms of technology in our classrooms? Angelica, what are you seeing in terms of concerns or things that might be tips for our induction teachers around technology in general?
I know more schools are becoming one-to-one. So everyone has like a laptop or an iPad or a touch screen. So of course, when I first became an educator, I was all into like using all these, different types of technology. So anything that was new, because I'm a really big tech person, like I will figure it out myself. You don't have to even give me a PD or anything. Just give me the computer and I'll figure out how to use the program myself. But then I noticed as the years went along, a lot of my kids were very, focused on the Chromebooks. Also, I started my first year in COVID. So literally we could not use any paper, barely. I couldn't give out books to other kids, to students, because we didn't know if that would spread germs or anything. So my first, basically my first 2 years was mostly just Chromebooks and computers. But then I noticed my kids were getting, more tired over time. And even one kid, he said, I'm just tired of looking at the screen. My eyes just hurt. And kids were buying, glasses help with the screen. And so I was realizing we are spending too much time on the Chromebooks, on the computers. And so this year, in the last 2 years, I've been using a lot more paper. I know I'm killing a lot of trees, but I'm an English teacher. But we also have textbooks this year. And a lot of my kids, I noticed with their writing. So when we started physically writing, they were actually doing better on their assessments. And some kids were like, this is the first time I've actually written something since middle school. I'm like, oh, wow.
Interesting.
But you have to kind of find that balance. So
Yeah.
you can't be completely focused on the computer, but they have a lot of, things that can help with the class, differentiation or, finding data about your students. But then also you have to find that balance where kids are actually off the screen, because sometimes, of course, if they're on the screen too much, of course, getting tired or, even, I'll call it finger fatigue, because they're on the Chromebooks the entire time. And sometimes they forget to even talk to each other. So at least with my class, as time has gone along, I'll try to break it half and half. So some of their assessments I do want on paper, while half of it may be on the Chromebook, because it's easier for me to grade, because that's easy to grade and keep up with. But you kind of have to find that balance and what works for you. So I know with me, I'm more half and half. Like today, we might be using the Chromebooks. By tomorrow, we're going to physically read a book. No Chromebooks, put it down, make sure it's completely closed. And so you just kind of have to find that balance, especially in what you're trying to teach in that day.
Right.
All right, so let's bring this home for our early career educators. So let's talk about some tips for them when implementing this policy. I think one would be for them to communicate clearly, basically ensuring that students and their families and parents understand the policy, and then making sure that that policy is, explained in clear language and phrased positively. I think another is to sort of leverage technology wisely. Um, sort of integrate some apps or other tools that align with the curriculum. A third would be to build relationships with students. Of course, that's a given, but create that classroom culture where, students are respected and they're taught to respect those boundaries around, cell phone bans and cell phone usage. And then, of course, they should be prepared for pushback, because there will be pushback.
Yeah.
And I think those are 4 of the tips that we could share with early career educators on sort of navigating cell phone bans. I'm going to throw out some scenarios to the 2 of you.
Okay.
Here's scenario 1, and I want your feedback on it. Here's a classroom situation. You notice a student looking down at their lap repeatedly. It's clear they are texting, but trying to hide it. Well, what would you do?
So at least the good thing with our Chromebooks, we have something called Go Guardian. So you can send a message. So that actually happened kind of today. But my favorite thing with students, instead of looking at their laps, we'll have a book and they're doing this in the book. How are you scrolling in a physical book? So that's my favorite thing with students. How are you scrolling in a book? That's my favorite thing. So usually they have the Chromebook up, or they're hiding behind the Chromebook and scrolling. And I know it's not touchscreen. So I just send a quick message. I see your phone. Please put it up. They look at me and they put it up. Because we have I have a good relationship with my students. So they know I'm not going to put them down. So if they know, if I say, put your phone up, or I just give them a look, they'll put it up. So you have to kind of start up. So, because now it's, almost the end of the year. So you kind of, like you said, Marcella, kind of set up those expectations early on. And I liked how you said you want to get pushback, but also have those consequences known at the beginning. So I've already have in my syllabus, my first consequence, I'm just going to tell you, or I might just look at you. And if most of my kids are really respectful, so if they know that what they're doing is wrong, I don't have to say anything. They put it up. Or what I love with my class, they'll tell each other, hey, he has his phone out, put it up. I don't have to say anything. It's perfect. So it just kind of depends on the student, but mainly I can just do a quick message or give them a look, because I've set those expectations early on in the year.
Yeah, Angelica, I think one of the things you're getting at, which is important no matter what the topic is in terms of classroom management, is the importance of building that rapport and that relationship with students. I think there's a lot of teachers who go in and then just want to be, hard, and they're just very rigid about the rules, and they don't take the time on the front end to establish the relationships that, I actually really care about you. I care about your future. I want you to succeed. I'm on your team. I'm on your side. Tell me more about yourself. Get to know the students. Use a sense of humor and really develop that relationship of trust with a student. Because then when you go to apply the rule, you're going to be more likely to have success. If you just go in and you just hammer the rules and you're gruff, and that is a recipe for a lot of unnecessary problems. The other thing, though, that coupled with that relationship, though, is the importance of being firm, fair, and consistent. And that means that you can't, you have to be consistent. You can't overlook it with one student and then with another student, you're immediately taking their phone. However your approach is going to be, it's got to be really consistent. Because as soon as students pick up on inconsistency from you or lack of firmness, that to me is where then they start why didn't you take his phone? He had his phone, then that whole thing comes up. So, and that's a real hard thing to do. It's just hard to do on a daily basis, to be consistent 100% of the time, but moving towards that, or working towards that consistency, that firmness, and on the front end, building the relationship is how I would do that. But specifically to your point, hopefully I've built a relationship with that student where I can go and talk to them and say, do you know what the rule is, right? And tell me what the rule is, make sure they understand, and then say, so what's the consequence that we discussed? And then you deliver the consequence But then you let them know, hey, I'm here. I just want you to succeed in my class, and you being on the cell phones, you're not going to succeed. So let's remove the distraction together.
Right. Yes. And I think that that avoids or helps you avoid standoffs and confrontations when you do it that way. Okay. What about a second scenario where you have a parent who calls a student during class and the student feels obligated to answer saying, "It's my mom," or "It's my dad."
Oftentimes when it's that, it depends. I'm like, why are they calling you? But sometimes I'm just like, just stand outside the door, take your little call. Not take your little call. Take your call. Sorry. Just take your call and just come right back in. Because most of the time that really rarely happens. And so sometimes I'm like, just staying right outside the door. So I know you're not walking off and you can take your call. If it's testing, no one's taking a call. Like no one, if it's really an emergency, they will call in. But normally, because that rarely happens, and my kids normally have the phones up, like they will come up to me like, Miss McDonald, my mom is calling, like make it like a very serious deal. So I'm stand outside the door, and it's usually less than a minute, and they come right back in, and I don't see the phone at all. So I kind of established that relationship with them. So I usually allow it, but not in the classroom. You're not calling your parents in or talking to them in the classroom while I'm teaching, or usually they'll excuse that.
I really hate teachers not having autonomy, and what I mean by that is determining how they want to handle these situations without blanket policies. I think if a teacher says, "Hey, I don't want use of cell phones at all in my classroom, and I want the administration to back me up on that policy," that's the way it should be. And if another teacher says, "Listen, there is a few moments during class where I don't mind them looking at it, or there's a certain project we're working on, or some type of an exception, and that works for that teacher." We got to get out of this paint by numbers type of mentality and give teachers back the autonomy to determine what's best for themselves, their students, and the culture they're trying to build in their classroom. Now, obviously, there are times when that could be exploited by a teacher who's just not. They're not enforcing any kind of rule, and there's got to be some kind of uniformity, to a degree. But I think this gets back to one of the a systemic issue we have, which is this sort of command and control from on high type of mentality that we want to have, where we're going to control every variable, eliminate any possible kink in the system, so that we can improve test scores. And I really think that's where this comes from, is we just want to command and control from the State Department or from the district office and have everybody doing the same thing, so we don't get any complaints from people that we're not fair. And I think that's just not the way life works.
Right.
I'm not sure why we're trying to make schools work that way. And this is why I'm a firm believer in smaller schools and more autonomy for educators.
Right. And I know we do have to try to sort of manage emergencies by being flexible, especially with students who utilize their cell phone for medical reasons. Like, for example, students who have type 1 diabetes, and they connect their medication with, their phone. We have, of course, allowances for things like that. And so we have to be a little bit more flexible in that regard. Another, for me, I think about safety reasons as well. So if something happens at the school, students will not be able to get in touch with their parents if there is, an emergency of that sort. So there are, like we said, there are pros and cons to the cell phone ban. But I hope that, along the line, we earn back some of the, the flexibility in managing cell phone use in schools.
Yeah. And I think, with that situation with the parent, it's like Angelica said, if it's a true emergency, and they will call this, they'll figure out, I can't get through the cell phone. Obviously, they're not allowed to have it during the day, so they're going to go back to what we did. When I was in school, your parents just call the school, and then they come and get you. It's not like you're cut off from the world,
Right.
if you don't have your cell phone. It might feel like it, but our parents can still get in touch in the case of emergency. So.
Because usually if a parent calls the kid, it's usually near the end of the day. So they're trying to figure out their ride situation, or really early in the morning because something happened earlier. And so that's the only reason. Usually in the middle of the day, that rarely ever happens.
Mhm.
Okay.
Well, as always, this time together always goes by so quickly. Appreciate the conversation, and look forward to our next episode. I think that's going to be in February, and we will be promoting that through the SCEA and through Cool's social media channels. Any final words before we sign off?
No, just a few key takeaways for educators. One, just stay consistent with school policies, while being flexible when you can, or if you can. View the cell phone ban or challenges as teachable moments. Like we said, teach them how to be responsible with, in digital citizenship, and using and leveraging technology, and then try to collaborate with administrators and parents to ensure that there is that unified approach so that parents know the rules and they try to follow those rules as well. So those would be my key takeaways.
Good points. Angelica?
And just also asking for help if you're a new teacher and you're very confused on like how your cell phone policy should work. What helped for me, I asked other teachers, they gave me their policy and I just revised and revamped into my own. So my policy has changed over time. So don't feel like what you did this year has to be what you continue with. You can change over time and just kind of learn through this.
That's a great point. And along those lines, we have something called Cool Coaching. So if you are an induction teacher and you're going into this and struggling with what your policy looks like, or just struggling with anything, or just have questions, you're not struggling, you just want some ideas or some support, Marcella and her team, Angie Brush and Stephanie Johnson, do something. It's an incredible service. It's called Cool Coaching. It's free. It's online. It's one-to-one support for our induction teachers. It happens every Tuesday and Thursday night from 6 to 8 o'clock. And all you have to do is go to cool.us/coaching to learn more. So a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for induction teachers. A couple of other things I wanted to make sure people knew about. We just released this today. Steve Newsom wrote a whole article about these books that are now being banned in South Carolina. That list is growing, and he will let you know all of the books that are now illegal in the state of South Carolina, and sort of his take on that whole issue. And Pete Stone released a great video called "Changing Our Approach to Advocacy." Really, really interesting video. If you haven't seen his videos, you can go to the Cool website and look under content, and all of his videos under the Cool Vibes tab. And the last thing I wanted to promote was a live stream coming up in December on the 11th at 7 o'clock. Met Jessica Carswell at Adventure Museum. They do a thing called Adventure Connects. And she's going to be talking about plant-based cooking. Her and her husband own a business, and they do really healthy type cooking, and they do cooking classes for people. And they're going to come on. She's going to come on and talk about plant-based cooking. So if you're interested in that, please join us December 11th. Thanks again to Angelica, to Dr. Marcella Wine-Snyder. Appreciate you. And thank you for tuning into Cool Beans. We will see you on the next episode in February, and hopefully we'll see you at the plant-based cooking session in December.
Thank you,
everybody.
Together we learn, together we grow, together we heal, together we flow. Be cool, every teacher, every school. Be cool, every teacher, every school.